Hi, welcome to the Total Kit Car YouTube channel. My name's Steve Hull, editor of TKC Mag and Total Kit Car, and welcome to another episode of the Total Kit Car History Files series. And I realise there's quite a lot of Total Kit Cars in there, but yeah, that's who I am. That's what we do, and that's what we're about. So apologies for that, but anyway, moving swiftly on. If you're a new visitor around here, very warm welcome. I realise that you might have been looking how to DIY media blast your garden gate, and you ended up here. But hey, come and stick around. It's enjoyable. This time we look at a child of the 80s kit car manufacturer, but a good one and a popular one, and one that really made its mark. Literally, I think it was pretty much that decade, the 80s. Company concerned is the Burlington Motor Company, based in Leamington Spa. Run by a lovely chap called Hayden Davis, a clever chap and a funny chap as well. One of the funniest men you'd meet, very clever. Last I heard of him, he was working in sort of top-end computer stuff, which wasn't how to start a Word document. It was top-end, real scientific stuff that I'd never understand in a million years. But very clever man. Sort of man that when you visited him in the 80s, he had a set of gates that opened automatically, and he'd adapted a washing machine motor or two to do the job. It did actually sound like his washing was on final spin, but they did work, and that was quite clever. And there you go. But so his first product was the Burlington SS, which looked like a Morgan Plus 4 really, which is not understandable because he liked those cars, and he liked traditional roadsters generally, and indeed he was inspired, I think, to become a kit car manufacturer. Remembering we're talking 45 years ago here, and I have got the benefits and notes and stuff, but I haven't spoken to Hayden, unfortunately, for many years, so a lot of this is going on memory, but it's pretty reliable and accurate, I think, and I'm sure if Hayden isn't watching it, someone will tell him, and he was never backward in coming forward to tell me when we'd made a mistake. So he was inspired by the Gentry, the Roger Blockley's RMB Gentry, which was an MGTD replica, I think. TCTD, I think. And I should know that. But Hayden's Burlington SS actually had a Morgan nose cone, and the front wings were Morgan as well. Straight out the Pickersleigh Road Parts Department. Very nice car. It was a combi plywood GRP, glass fibre body, skinned in aluminium sheet. The initial ones didn't have doors, and that double-sided bonnet, slightly weirdly, I think, only the top halves of those opening bonnets panels opened on the Mark 1. The Triumph base, by the way, Triumph Herald. And then in 1982, a couple of years after it had been launched, arrived a Mark II. Now that expanded the chassis options. Hayden could supply you a modified Triumph Herald chassis initially. That was always, I think, the preferred option. Excuse me. And then with the Mark II, other options were available. So you could base it on Ford Escort 1 or 2, MGB, Morris Marina. That project was taken over by a company called Dorian Motor Company, run by a father and son team of Brian and Martin Doran. Now you may think I've just made a mistake there because I said Dorian Motor Company and then their surname was Doran. They added the I to the Dorian part. I think they thought it sounded better. Now, Brian was a very clever chap, a good pedigree. He used to be a Triumph test driver back in the day at Canley, and he has held the distinction of driving the very last Triumph Stag produced off of the production line. They had been, I think they were trading as Burlington Motor Spares prior to taking over the SS, and doing a good job of it as well. And they used to produce parts for Hayden. And indeed, he asked them to create a new centre tub body tub mould for the car, which they did. And then I think he wanted to go off the grease for a while, where he lived for a little while, and they ended up taking the SS over. I think Hayden had done about 120. The Dorans did, I think, about another 80. So there probably were about 200 of those made or sold. You never know how many. Doesn't mean because they were sold that they actually got made. Of course, this is the kit car industry after all, and the land of the unfinished kit car in people's back gardens and driveways. Sadly, Hayden's friend Dave Pepper, who was running AF Sports at that time, he acquired the rights to the project in 1989, selling it a year later to a GRP. I think he might have been his GRP laminator, a guy called Neil Duncan from Dorchester. He resurrected it. Sadly, it wasn't around for long. Not sure if I said, but the Mark II Burlington SS that had doors, and it also had both full opening bonnet. It wasn't just the top halves of each half, shall we say. It was fully opening. I believe they offered I do believe they offered a 4-seater version as well, or 2+2. I may have dreamt that one, but I do believe that was true. One of the Dorans, and I think it was Brian, sadly died in about 1988. Very sadly passed away, and that kind of the company went with it at the same time. Unfortunately, they were doing a good job, the Dorans. They really were. They were producing, or they were maintaining what Hayden had created, and dare I say, had improved upon it. Next for Hayden was the Burlington Arrow, and its brother, the Beretta. Now, the Arrow was probably the better selling of the two, I would suggest. Very much MGTC inspired. And indeed, I mean, Hayden once, said fairly regularly that it was the if customers really wanted an NGTC TF, but they couldn't afford one, and you were a dab hand mechanically, then Hayden could sell you a set of plans and patterns to create your own version of one of his Arrow Roadsters. Again, he was round all about the Triumph donor, and it was a plywood body, aluminium skinned, and then once you've done that, Neil's going to put up a partly complete Arrow body, and you can clearly see aluminium covering some of the panels, and you can clearly see some of the ply. And you could use Spitfire, Herald or Vitesse. Later on an MGB version was available actually. The customer was required, certainly on the Herald, you had to add 5 inches to the chassis, which was actually very scary for some people, but Hayden could offer that for an additional cost. He could add that to you, modify that chassis. And they cut the outriggers. Triumph had those outriggers, and they were heavily cut back to within the confines of the Arrow's frame. Hayden could supply you the radiator surrounds, the scuttle panel, the front wings, rear diff and running boards. And you also had to buy aluminium bonnet and a dummy GRP fuel tank. Get that out in a minute. Those GRP parts, actually, certainly for Hayden, the scuttle and the radiator definitely were supplied in gel coat and supplied by Peter Bird of Lomax and Falcon Designs fame. He was doing that. Those two were good friends. So the body panels, you needed an 8x4 sheet from down at Wicks, 3/4 inch thick plywood, and as I said earlier, you skinned it in aluminium sheet. I think the plans were about a tenner, and were said to be of very good quality. I mean, that was nothing new. Lots of people had sold kit cars in plan form. Mike Ryan had done it, or he did it later with the F27. But certainly John Cowperthwaite had been doing it way before Hayden got into it, and he'd sold lots of those. Think of Midge, and other models. He could actually, and a bit like the low cost in later years where things could be done for you if you didn't want to do the whole hog yourself, Hayden could supply the panels pre-cut for you, an extra charge of course. I remember talking to him once and he reckoned he'd sold 6,000 sets of plans. Initially I think they were sold at £5.50. And he reckoned, and he's a very clever man, and he knew his market. He reckoned that He reckoned that it was about 10% of those were actually built into cars. It was launched actually at Santa Pod, a kit car rally at Santa Pod. I'd actually forgotten about that. In 1982. In 2008, actually, that's the last time I spoke to Hayden. He was starting to sell plans. Once again, but not in paper format. He discovered the big king of the day was CD-ROM, and he would supply you. When did I last see one of them? It's like a floppy disk, isn't it? He'd sell you a CD-ROM with the plans there to make an arrow. But it was a good car actually. Some beautifully built ones over the years. Some real craftsmen got involved in them, which is always a good sign. A couple. I know he told me some joiners had built the car. Built some of his cars. They're definitely inspired not only by the TC, but primarily the way the TC, I suppose, looked. But it's also inspired by the Triumph Dolomite Straight 8 of 1935. Yeah, so initially it was Herald. You could later use Spit, Vitesse, and GT6. But that didn't stop customers going their own way. Inevitably, the kit car industry is all about doing your own thing. And certainly if you look at specials or you look at plain and pattern cars, people will go their own way. And so therefore, I think he said that someone had actually used a Lotus Elan as a donor, Triumph TR4, Scimitar, and even I believe one was based on VW Beetle. Then came the sister model, wasn't quite so popular. That was the Beretta. I like that name, Beretta. Now that one looked very similar, but it had flowing wings with running boards. And if you put the two together, they are similar, but they are different. In addition to the wings, the bonnet panel side slightly more sloped, give it slightly its own style, really. And it also had 4 inches extra in length as well. It was longer. And I think if we want to be really technical, really trivial, there are, if you look at the two together, there are more aluminium strips used on a Beretta. That one didn't quite catch the same level of attention as the Arrow did. But it was still a good car, and lots of people. I think the split really was in favour of the Arrow. It wasn't a true kit, obviously, because it was patterns and plans. And I suppose if 600 were truly built of the Arrow and the Beretta, I reckon it'd be a hard one to get. I reckon maybe 2/3 of those were Arrows, but it's very, very hard to say. Another model another plan and pattern model that Hayden got involved in was the Burlington Chieftain. Now that was a Willis Jeep type look-alike. Again, based, you could have a short wheelbase version based on a Triumph Spitfire, or a long wheelbase, which was Triumph Herald based. Plan sets for that one cost a tenner. That one came out in 1983. And again, Hayden reckons some 500 sets of those plans were sold. Although he was under the impression that there were less of those actually built. Maybe 150. Although again, it's very, very difficult to say. And certainly now in sort of time. There was another project that he got involved in. I'm not sure if anyone bought one or actually definitely built one, but that was called the what was that called? The Centurion. That was an American project by a company called Quincy Lynn Enterprises, imported briefly by Hayden. It was said that in the States, Quincy Lynn had sold 80,000 sets of plans. I'm not sure if that's true, but no reason to dispute that. The UK version was converted by Hayden to run on the Triumph Herald donor, including the chassis, sheet ply body, using the egg box boat construction method, and then that was clad in polyurethane foam over a sheet aluminium skin. That taxed the builder in the UK quite hard because you needed some specific stuff, American stuff. Like you needed to find a Buick Riviera for some parts, but only a 1981 model. So if you found a 1981, mate, you was out of luck. So you needed that, and you definitely needed an Oldsmobile Vista for its rear light lenses. Plan sets were dearer for that. They were £14.95. I'm not sure. I think he probably sold a good few sets of plans, but I've never seen one. Hayden probably would know of any, but certainly Hayden would know. But I've never seen one. I'd like to see one. If you know someone that's got a Burlington Centurion, can you please get in touch and point them in our direction? But so there we go. But anyway, there is, in a nutshell, a nice short but sweet one today on Burlington Motor Company, run by the marvellous Hayden Davis. And as I said, if you're listening, Hayden, hope you're well. Give me a shout. I haven't spoken to you for too long. And if you haven't done so, dear reader, if you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. I think we're up to about 32% subscribing compared to those that don't, who watch these videos. Subscriber numbers are going up gently, but we'd like them to go up quicker and higher. And on the way out, if you could also hit the like button. Of course, it won't cost you a penny to subscribe, and you will be helping the channel. I really do mean that, and as well as being greatly appreciated. Thank you for visiting today, and indeed for giving us up a chunk of your day. Wherever you are in the world, whenever you're listening to this, hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to welcoming you to the next video next time. Steve Hull over and out.